Welcome to the HOLDO MANEUVER podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Mike. We're two hardworking dads trying to immerse ourselves into Star Wars and fit it into our very busy lives.
If this is your first time listening and or watching, in this sometimes short-form Star Wars podcast, we'll share our thoughts on different topics from a galaxy far, far away. So join us as we prepare to execute the HOLDO maneuver. All right,
you gotta go to Arizona, don't you?
Yeah.
He'll be back. Don't worry.
Well, hey everybody, we're live.
It was
Hi everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
live
every
TV,
week-
y'all.
Exactly. And also every week we try to tell a Star Wars themed dad joke. So this week was hard. It just felt forced.
So, this week we are back with a live show with awesome opening there, which
It glitched out. Like it worked fine at the test, and just
So so we are back with episode 46 of the HOLDO Maneuver. Welcoming back our returning guest Collins this week. Welcome, sir.
welcome. Thank you for being here.
Howdy guys. Happy Star Wars Day. May the force be with you.
Or is it Cinco de Quattro?
Here's some money. Go see a Star Wars.
Yeah, here's some money. Go see a Star Wars.
So since it did cut off a little bit, if you haven't listened to this or watched this before, I'll just say our stuff really quick. Mike and I are two hardworking dads trying to immerse ourselves into Star Wars and fit it into our busy lives. So if this is your first time listening or watching, this is sometimes short form Star Wars podcast where we share our thoughts on different topics from a galaxy far, far away. So this week we're going to be talking about The Mandalorian season 3 versus The Bad Batch season 2, kind of both of those seasons as a whole, and what we thought about them.
We have a question.
Gustavo, it's in Quebexico. You know where it is. It's at Tashi Station in Quebexico City, at the corner of Greedo and McClunky. Gustavo is also a guest we've had in the past.
Yes.
Thank you for watching, Gustavo. This week we're just gonna be talking about like our thoughts on both those seasons as a whole, which one we liked more, possibly what we liked better about either of the seasons, and what possibly was like our least favorite things about those seasons as well. So if you haven't watched all of season 3 or of Mandalorian or season 2 of The Bad Batch, we will be talking about them in their entirety. So spoilers for anything that happened within those seasons of those shows. But before we get into that, Collins was actually lucky enough to get to go to Star Wars Celebration in London recently when they did that. So how was that?
Oh, it was a great time, honestly, and I was very lucky because this was my second Star Wars Celebration, and honestly, what I love about that event in general, obviously the announcements and the cosplay and all that, I just also love that it's a place where people could like just generally celebrate Star Wars, because especially with Star Wars, like I love the fandom, but we're often at each other's throats, which is unfortunate. But this is just it's just a place where people can be like, yeah, it's awesome to like have Star Wars in our lives. Mm-hmm. So that's the best thing. Now, this was in London, so I had to go across the pond, so to speak, to get to attend. And it was obviously kind of expensive, but worth it. I think worth it. This was my first time in London, and it was a fun time.
Nice. Now I know you're also a Ted Lasso fan, because I saw it. You got to check out part of Richmond while you were there too, so I was pretty jealous about that. We recently got Mike into it as well too, so now awesome. you will know what you're talking about if you say like
I get the references now.
Yeah.
But Yeah. So what was, I guess, like the one and only celebration I went to was in 2005 in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
The first
That
one
was
was it?
No, well, that was the third one
The
because
third one.
they started it with episode 1 and then episode 2,
Okay,
episode 3.
gotcha.
That was actually my son's first convention too, even though he wasn't out of the womb yet. He was. So I always tell him he went to his first Star Wars convention before he was even born. And that was also like the first convention my wife went to with me. So like I was like, all right, this woman will be my wife someday because she went to a Star Wars convention with me out of state.
Right.
And that was so.
You just wanted White Castle. Don't lie.
I mean, there's closer ones than Indianapolis if you really wanted White Castle. But yeah, I guess what was it like your favorite thing that you got to see while you were there? We talked about the Ahsoka trailer a few episodes ago, but was there anything like you saw like on the floor there or panels that you went to that stood out to you at all?
So there were a couple of cool panels. So like obviously I think it was the first day where they had the Lucasfilm showcase, and that's what was interesting because we didn't know. Obviously, we didn't know what they were going to announce. I mean, we figured we'd probably see stuff from the upcoming TV shows, which we did. So that was kind of cool to see. But we were kind of on pins and needles. Will they announce movies? Will they, say anything about Star Wars being back on the silver screen? And they made us wait. They made us wait through Acolyte and Skeleton Crew and Andor, which is all said good, right? Like we all love the Star Wars on TV stuff, but
Yeah.
And then they showed us Indiana Jones a little bit, which was very like are the things to show us any movies or announce any movie stuff. So they waited till the very end, and I got to say, when they brought out. Because they had this whole, here's a Star Wars timeline all the way from, Dawn of the Jedi to, rebuilding the new Jedi Order. And they announced, okay, they're going to have a new Rey movie. And they brought out Daisy Ridley. At least in the room, went absolutely nuts. People were screaming.
Nice.
It was pandemonium. So that was a very, that was an awesome moment, right? Just to have that kind of acclamation. Again, this is something that I love about Star Wars Celebration because I think last year it was the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones. And for that time, I went to one panel where Hayden was obviously on the panel along with like Ewan and a couple of other people from episode 2. And just the love the room showed for Hayden, maybe not some good times from being Anakin Skywalker was just so amazing. And that's what I love about Star Wars Celebration is just people just losing their minds for Star Wars and for the announce. So that probably was my favorite moment. And then there's a couple other things like the stars from the Clone Wars, playing a game in one panel, and there was like a lot of ad-libbing there, which is pretty cool. And yeah, just being on the floor with the various cosplay and props from the various movies and shows is also very cool.
Did you dress up?
So see, I always feel like I should cosplay as something. I just never know what, because and especially when I look at other cosplayers, they are so good. They are so dedicated. Right. I know they had to get up like at 4 a.m. to like put on makeup and everything. So it's like if I feel like I did cosplay as something, I would have to do something.
You gotta be.
I'd want to dedicate myself toward it.
Yeah, it's either got to be so elaborate that people are in awe, or ironic. I feel like
exactly.
You can't be like his half-assed in the middle, so you have to be one end or the other.
Yeah, I gotta say one thing that really surprised me with the cosplay was that so many people were Nakina 5 prisoners from Andor, and there's actually a lot of the one way out like runs from Andor, and I just loved that show has been embraced by the fandom, so that was really cool to see as well.
Nice.
That show better be embraced. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I know our friend Vactor. He had won tickets just recently because they showed the last 3 episodes of Andor on the Disney lot for Collider, I believe.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, so like he got to watch it there at the theater on the Disney lot, and then I believe Tony Gilroy was supposed to be there, but with at that time the impending writer's strike, he stayed home and finished writing season 2 so that he could have it done before the writer's strike started.
Right.
Which, side note, everybody support the WGA, so like because the writers are what make all the shows that we like.
Exactly.
If they didn't write the stuff, there wouldn't be the stuff to then create from that. So
thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully that gets resolved quickly too, and everybody gets what they should properly be getting compensated for, especially with like streaming and everything now. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Android. They also recently announced, like, I believe like the final 3-episode arc of that is going to be like the last like 5 days leading up to the beginning of Rogue One. So I'm assuming it's gonna, so I'm assuming it's gonna like be setting up like Cassian and like K2SO, like setting up Jin's breakout and all of that. And
so cool, yeah.
So that should be.
But will we see Jin?
Maybe, probably not though. Maybe, just because I don't know. Maybe I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I guess Andy Serkis was also at that screening too, and he was like, I saw some people there were dressed up as the prisoners, and he led like a one way out chant with them too. And I guess he would have kept stay there and stay taking pictures with everybody, but they had to close the theater, so that's the only reason they stopped. But yeah, so I guess from here we'll get into talking about our main topic. So recently, about 2 weeks ago now, Mandalorian season 3 ended, and about a week or so before that, the season 2 of Bad Batch ended. So kind of we'll get like the initial thoughts before we go into like more of like a bigger breakdown on both of them. But Mike, what was your like overall impression of season 3 of Mando and season 2 of Bad Batch? Because I know that you binged season 2 at one point because we were going to talk about the finale one week, but then we decided.
I think I binge all of Bad Batch. For Mando, I felt season 3 was like a drift. They kind of, I don't like, and my gut feeling is because of all the canceled projects, they had to re-edit this season for whatever reason. That's just why I think happened. And then they made their announcements kind of towards the finale there, and it kind of cleared up some confusion I had with what they were building towards. I loved the world building. I loved the Bo-Katan story specifically was just, I loved her story arc throughout the whole thing. It was like the meat that kept me coming back. The one dogfight scene they had, still love that. And the comedy of Grogu and the yes-no stuff he did was great. Bad Batch, it's been a hard watch. Watching both seasons of those, just, I don't know, I couldn't get into it the way I wanted to, and I believe then like it kind of had a revelation. Animated Star Wars for me is always like, while animation is great, I love animation, it's a great medium. It can tell great stories, but for Star Wars, I don't want to see it animated, if that makes sense. Like the live action part of it, even though it could be heavily CGI'd, having the live feeling like it's actually happening in front of you adds an element that animation kind of removes, because they can draw anything. They can do whatever they want. Like having it feel like, oh, what's actually happening in front of you makes it grander, makes it more of a spectacle. So I enjoy the live more than I enjoy the animated. And that's kind of a consensus I've come to watching Bad Batch, and the binge method I had to do it.
Nice. How about you, Collins?
So I really enjoyed Mando season 3. It's probably my least favorite season out of the 3, but I still really enjoyed it.
Fair.
And as Michael's alluded to, I also really enjoy the world building. For some reason, when it comes to Star Wars, this is maybe really weird of me, but I really like getting into like the nitty gritty and almost like the bureaucracy of Star Wars. So like the way that the New Republic is operating is fascinating to me. So like in one episode with Dr. Pershing, I think it was called the Convert, where we're just kind of going through Coruscant and how the New Republic is operating and kind of rehabilitating old Imperial assets. I find that fascinating. Maybe I'm just weird. But I also enjoyed the fact that this was a story not just about one Mandalorian in Djarin, but I guess like multiple Mandalorians.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of a deeper dive into Mandalorian culture. So I really enjoyed that. It did have some issues with focus. It wasn't as focused as the first two seasons, but I still overall really enjoyed it, and especially the last couple of episodes. I thought were really action packed, very Star Warsy, in my opinion. And Bad Batch. I'm biased just because I love the clones. I don't know why, but when it comes to clones, I'm really like Fives, Rex, Commander Cody, like all the clones. I'm a big fan of it, and Bad Batch. I've just got really attached to that crew. So the season finale for me was frankly kind of devastating. So for me, it was very emotional. And for me, Bad Batch, I think, is strongest when it's more about the mythology and about how it's telling the story of how the Empire went from basically using clones to using the stormtroopers that we know in the original trilogy, and especially the Crosshairs arc, the Crosshairs episode. I thought it was so good, so good. And like I said, that season finale. I know some people think that Tech is still alive. I very much doubt that, and there's almost a part of me that having gone through somewhat of a grieving process, if they just kind of bring it back, if Filoni is like and crew are like, let's bring it back somehow, we'd be like,
they can.
That's cheating it a little bit. I mean, they can. You're right, they can. But yeah. So for me, there's a lot of angst about that, and of course, one thing they did announce at Celebration was that the Bad Batch season 3 will be the last season, so it'll be interesting to see how that resolves. But I can't wait to get back with this crew again. And
I can echo your point on the mythology part.
Echo.
Yeah, exactly. It was a chosen word. Because the whole Sid storyline, like, I was just like, you're just mercenaries now? Like, well, come on. But when they got away from her and started doing the other stuff, I was like, okay, if this was more of what it was like from the get-go, it probably wouldn't have been so strenuous for me personally.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. So my like overall consensus on both of them is that I think for me personally, I liked, out of the two shows, I believe I liked season 3 of, or sorry, season 2 of, it's going back and forth to the numbers, just messing with that. Season 2 of Bad Batch, a little bit more than I liked Mando season 3, just because at least story-wise, overall, I thought season 2 of Bad Batch was, at least from the start to finish, more consistent with the narrative that it was trying to tell from the beginning to end of that. What was interesting is that some of the weeks, unintended or not, like with how kind of somewhat connected of like what each episode was kind of about between Mando and Bad Batch, because they're both kind of like talking about like cloning and whatnot between both. I mean, Bad Batch is about like a group of clones, but but it was I thought like a lot of the stuff they did in season 2 of Bad Batch was interesting, especially some of the arcs they did and how they fleshed out some of the characters more. Because in season 1 of Bad Batch, it was mostly like about like Hunter and like like Wrecker more as far as like the characters that it highlighted as far as, and like a little bit more of Crosshair, but then like this one, they leaned more into like focusing on tech a lot more, which was probably because they knew
where it was going,
like where that story was going. So they're like, let's put more focus on tech this season, and a little bit more on Echo as well too, because they kind of like had his path diverge off to go be with Rex. So, and I thought, again, kind of cross correlate with some of the stuff that happened on both of them. So we lost like Paz Vizsla in Mando in the penultimate episode of that, and then we lost Tech in Bad Batch, and losing Tech in Bad Batch definitely hurt a lot more than Paz Vizsla. So I think that just shows like how better, at least far as like character wise, Tech was developed than if we were supposed to feel worse when Paz Vizsla got taken out for sacrificing himself, because they both kind of did like a self-sacrifice in the way so that the rest of the team could go forward.
I feel Paz Vizsla never taking it, like the helmet ruins it for the emotional connection, because you can't see like their expressions.
Good point.
Yeah. It's just you see the helmet and all. It's like okay, I have to believe your robotic kind of voice is emoting something.
That's true.
So like when Din took his helmet off or had his helmet taken off, you had that emotional connection very quickly. Bo was able to face act more than so just having the lack of face hurts the Mandalorian from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And like this season,
although I was not happy about losing Paz Vizsla, I was not happy about it, but that's a good point.
Yeah, I was gonna say like this season, like sometimes we've gotten like cross-platform characters between both these shows too. Like in season 1 of Bad Batch, we had Fennec Shand, who's gonna show up again in season 3, and then she was obviously like in season 1 of Mando and all Book of Boba Fett. But and there she is at the door right now. But I think it's interesting to see like some of like, because we also know that we're going to be getting Wolf, I believe, right, in season 3 of Bad Batch.
I think so.
Who we saw, we had saw in Rebels. So it'll be interesting to see, knowing that Bad Batch season 3 will be the final season for that too. I'll be curious to see like where they weave to where that'll end, as far as like what that kind of connects and leads into, like if that somehow leads into where we see some of, because we don't see any of these characters in any other show. So
exactly, that's
that was what I was going to ask. Do you think we'll see a live Omega or live Hunter or any of that coming up in like Ahsoka?
Maybe.
I think there's a chance for Omega to make an appearance somewhere else after Bad Batch ends.
Yeah, it's just...
And then like especially now that like they like dropped that with like her having like the sister at the end too.
Yes.
So that like that whole thing should be interesting to see as far as how that plays out, because like now I also kind of liked like how not tidy the so like I guess if you compare the season finales of both shows too, where like the Mando season 3 one almost felt like a series finale.
Yes,
like a little bit. Yeah,
like
it could have
totally
been a series finale. Yeah,
where like it felt like everything wrapped up. They even did like the little iris closed Looney Tunes thing on Grogu there at the end, where it's like, oh, there's the end of the story. But then here in Bad Batch season 2, we had Omega and Crosshair off together with like the Lama Su and with what's his name, Emery Carr. The one that Sam Witwer is doing the the voice
Oh,
for another Sam Witwer Star Wars voice.
yeah, another voice he does. Yeah.
So yeah, we have them off together, I guess, like that group of three, and then we have Echo, Wrecker, and Hunter that are basically, they don't know where they all are, but they're gonna. So basically, it seems like that's gonna be the mission of season 3, is them all coming back together, and they'll probably explore more of like Omega with her sister, and how that all happens, and because now we know Omega's not the only female clone of Jango Fett. So,
and that was interesting, that whole thing from Bad Batch. The way the Kaminoans were just like, we're going to play with this and make other people. So how many other random Jango Fett clones are there that are just floating about now?
yeah.
Interesting tidbit that they
Exactly.
threw that in there.
Yeah. That's the other kind of thing too that both shows are playing with, is that they're kind of setting up the, like the Operation Necromancer thing, where like Bad Batch is doing like the very, very, very preliminary work for Palpatine, like just after the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith have happened, and then on the other side of that, after post his death, well, his first death, and he hasn't somehow returned yet.
Right.
So it's interesting. I liked, like, if watching them kind of together like that, you could kind of see, it was cool to kind of see the beginning of that kind of ideas with it, and like how it was flowing off to the other part of the timeline there. Now, like in both shows, was there, I know, Mike, that you have like some notes for both like Mando and Bad Batch. So I agree with like the Sid stuff. I do kind of agree that like when they stayed with Sid for such a long time on that, it kind of made it feel. I saw one comparison once where it was like the A team in space.
Very true. Very apt comparison, because it was.
Yeah, especially I'm like, and she was just given the mission they were to do. I did like there's the episode earlier in the season that had what's his name, Ben Schwartz, Sonic the Hedgehog.
BB-8. Wasn't he one of the two? Him and Bill Hader.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but like he did the voice of like that other like kind of like self-important droid that was basically doing like that version of like drag racing in that episode.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, the racing episode, that was a fun one.
It was like another tech-heavy episode too.
Yeah, yep.
Which that episode made me wonder: are we ever going to see pod racing again?
I think that was like as close as we got to it, because we also got like the Boonta Eve stuff in Mando season 3 too, which again was, I think, just as close.
Yeah, it's just like it was just, is there whatever the hell the word is, no pod racing ever again. Moratorium. Unless
George directs it, because he knows how to.
He knows how to pod race.
Yeah, well, just because like pod racing itself is basically like all influenced by his own like street racing stuff that he did in Modesto, and what they did in American Graffiti. That's why Dexter Jettster's diner is like a 50s diner in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with like some of the other stuff in there too, I did like when they broke away from Sid, and I could tell that she was also gonna like ultimately
it was
by the end of that.
It was forecasted, but I hated that. I hated that moment. I hated that character so much, and it's rare for me to like really like hate a Star Wars character, because even the villains, like, okay, yeah, they're supposed to be villains, but Sid in that moment, I just thought I'm just done with this character. And again, I have this bias toward the clones and towards the Bad Batch, but I was just like, after all they've done for you, and yes, they were hired, but I was legitimately disgusted when it happened.
Right.
Yeah. And I like what they were doing with Tech this season too, because I felt I liked like kind of like what they were doing with like his personality too,
Yeah.
and kind of showing like just how different some of the clones in here are as
Mhm.
well. Where like he, like I don't even know if like it would exist like in a galaxy far, far away, but like maybe that like tech was like somewhere like on like the spectrum possibly too,
Hmm.
with just with like how he could react and whatnot to stuff.
So you're saying they cloned him to be on the spectrum?
But yeah,
Interesting.
because I don't want to like touch on that too much because I don't, because I feel like I don't
No, it's
want.
nothing bad. It's just like it's
Yeah,
an interesting concept.
yeah. I mean I liked a lot what they did with him, and then like with Wanda Sykes' character in the
I
season
love
two.
that I just love Wanda Sykes, so I was glad to hear her voice in Star Wars. So
Yeah,
she's hilarious.
I love the dynamic between those characters. I thought that was a nice touch.
yeah, like, and they kind of like broadcast that he was gonna die before he left there too, because of like her kind of like goodbye to him in that episode too. Which, and then our friend Baxter has told me plenty of times that I would like the Dr. Aphra character,
Yes.
which seems like that's almost kind of like what Wanda Sykes' character is like heavily influenced on, is because I'm told like that character is very basically like a female Indiana Jones within the Star Wars universe, which kind of seems like that's more or less what that character is.
Right.
Which I liked. I liked all her stuff in there too, and how they fleshed out a little bit more. And I liked that the planet that they went there to. Was it like Pabu?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then between Gustavo said this too, with between both shows, they also kind of touched more on droids as well too. Like you had Mando being like droid racist, basically.
I can't help but laugh when he just started randomly kicking those droids.
Yeah, and then 3 episodes later, calling R5 buddy. I was like, you didn't earn calling him buddy. You were just saying droids suck 2 episodes ago. And then like you had like the same kind of thing happening within the Bad Batch, not to like a lesser extent, but just as much as like droids were kind of just being used as labor and not being like seen as kind of having any kind of sentience at all. Where
right,
we've seen between like Andor and well all the other ones, like 3PO obviously has sentience to him. He's like,
well, R2 does as well.
Yeah. Chopper obviously does. B2EMO.
Well, that the droid from that Lando was basically dating.
Oh yeah, Leeds, which that makes me laugh with Dial of Destiny for Indiana Jones. I was like, oh look, Hana's with Leeds again, just because of female marriage. But yeah, and then that's you bringing up Leeds makes me like think about that too. Or like her consciousness is trapped in the Falcon. Like that kind of sucks for her. But
maybe she enjoys it.
Who knows? Maybe it's like maybe the Falcon is like the TARDIS, and it brings it brings Han or Lando where they need to be and not where they want to go.
Right.
But was there like what did you guys feel about that? As far as like what they've been kind of touching on as far as like with like droids between both Bad Batch and then Mando, especially kind of with Mando's like that felt weird too. It's like his backslide, like it felt like he had earned like respect and like was trusting of droids now, and then like the beginning of the season he didn't again, and then he did, and then he had a really big backslide. Like it felt like that episode, as far as like where he was with how he's treating the droids, was almost like a season 2 version of even like not even season 2, maybe like early season 1 Din Djarin.
That's his character flaw.
Yeah, I guess character development isn't a straight line. It's like you know, it's wavy. But like,
then there's the theory that characters.
Yeah, I guess so. It was I felt, yeah.
I'm always a fan of the droids, and I thought it was very interesting to make them more sentient and have like the issues they outlined in Mando, where they're like we're being phased out type deal, and how they had that bar they all met at secretly.
Yeah,
that was trippy actually to see that droid bar. Yeah, I just thought it was trippy because I'm not sure if we had seen something like that in Star Wars before. I was trying to think if we had a precedent for that. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw like the inverse of it, I guess, like in the original Star Wars with where we don't serve your kind here and starts to get out. So like that's kind of an interesting like underlying like subtext to all the films with like how droids are treated within this universe. That would probably be like an interesting class or like a paper for some kid to write as like a thesis.
Probably has
in college. Well, yeah, probably, or do some kind of thesis on talking about like droid rights within like the Star Wars universe and like how that correlates to different things in like the real world. It is like an interesting dichotomy with that kind of stuff, I think.
I mean, hell, at Oswego, they taught accounting through Seinfeld or something like that. So why not have a paper on droids?
I think it was probably mostly because they wanted to be like
more. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to make a joke just to be like they wanted to promote that Jerry Seinfeld had gone there for one.
They tried. Then they had to settle for Al Roker.
Yeah, Al Roker loves that he went to Oswego. He loves it. Like when he's not wearing a suit, he is wearing Oswego alumni attire. That's literally
probably pay him to do it.
Yeah, he probably doesn't pay for any of those clothes. They probably just give him the Oswego stuff. And
granted, when he went there, it was way cheaper than when we went there.
That's true. What were you going to say, Collins?
Oh no, so I was just going to that, especially with what our to the emergence of AI and AI getting more and more prevalent. Kind of having that comparison between frankly the artificial intelligence we see in droids in the Star Wars universe. I think that could be an interesting contrast, because at least for me, because I also love droids in the Star Wars universe, but for me it's like R2D2, Chopper, B2EMO, General Grievous. I just see them as characters. I don't even see them as like robots or devices. They are characters. So for me, it's always kind of really jarring when someone in universe like that, when annoying trick that Leia was arguing with in the Obi-Wan series about how droids are just things. It's always so jarring because like really, like they can do all these things and they do the personality. It's just strange when they see that as like people.
Yeah, a lot of times the droids are like some of the best characters in this stuff too, like K2SO,
B2EMO.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Granted, the droids animated series from the 80s, can't say that's the best thing, but
are any of the specials from the 80s a good thing?
Yeah, they have their
moments.
They have their moments. The Ewoks movies.
The holiday.
So I watched. So I watched the Ewoks. So I watched the entire Ewoks Saturday morning cartoon show and the Droids show just because I felt like I had to, because it was Star Wars. And I got to say, after a certain amount of time, it's like it just become like inured to it. It's just kind of like, okay, I just accept what this is, and it's very weird, but because it's weird, I kind of find it interesting because it's almost like almost so surprised that something like this exists, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's of the time too, because like I bet if we went back and watched like a lot of like cartoons that we liked while we were growing up,
hella racist.
Or just
Looney Tunes, hella racist.
Yeah, well, yeah, most kind of cartoons and like, or I guess just TV in general between like 1950s to 1990s, or like you had Fred Flintstone and Barney Flintstone selling cigarettes in ads too. So,
Right.
But it's just hilarious because they had the standards and practices back then, like, were so strict on certain things, but then there's just like blatant racism and everything. There's just cigarette ads in the middle of things. It's crazy how like that stuff's okay, but if you show two people in the same bed,
oh yeah,
rated R.
Yeah. So, I guess it's like a final wrap up to Mando season 3 and Bad Batch season 2 talk. Your overall ranking between the two, Mike, which one did you like more?
I hate doing rankings, even though I have videos where I've ranked things. I just because it depends on the moment. Both of them to me were like Bad Batch had more coherent story, like you said, Mark. But I enjoyed Mando more because of it being live, so it ranks higher for me. Even though it was very, very cut up and strange flowing, and every time he's like, "Oh, they raided the ship. They're going to gain some traction on this story," they flop over to somewhere else. But just because I don't know why Bad Batch was a hard watch for whatever reason, I don't know why. But then the animation of it, like, even though it's good animation and animation is good, like I've said several times, I just like the live Star Wars better. It just appeals to me more.
How about you,
Kyle? No, it's not really live.
For me, again, I enjoyed both. I would put Bad Batch season 2 above Mando season 3 by a hair. I think there are some individual episodes within Bad Batch season 2 that I thought were really, really, really strong. So Bad Batch season 2 and then Mando, but I thought they were both really good.
And I'm going to scapegoat this and say that all Star Wars is good Star Wars. Although I enjoyed Bad Batch season 2 more than Mando season 3, but I enjoyed both.
Yeah, I enjoyed both, but like I'm gonna put Mando up just because of the whole live thing and Salad the Hutt. Gotta throw him in there.
So that'll kind of wrap up our May the 4th kind of special episode that we're doing. We're gonna coming up be doing an episode that's going to be another crossover with Animation Fascination. That Mike will be coming over to talk with Stanford and I, or will Stanford be coming over to Holdo to talk with Mike and I?
Just cut him in half.
Yeah, just crossing the streams of Animation Fascination with HOLDO Maneuver to talk about Star Wars Visions Volume 2 that just came out today. We probably would have talked about that, but I don't think any of the three of us had enough time to watch that yet. Plus, they also released a bunch of those Star Wars Simpsons shorts on Disney
I've been
Plus
sending
today
you those.
Yeah. So that'll be the next episode we do. We'll be talking about Star Wars Visions Volume 2 as well as the Simpsons Star Wars shorts. So that will do it for episode 46 of the HOLDO Maneuver. So where you can find us online, leave us a review on the podcast catcher of your choice. Yeah, just look to the right or below or wherever it shows for you. Or if you're listening, it's in the show notes. But you can leave us a review on the podcast catcher of your choice. It allows you to do so. It's usually Spotify and Apple Podcasts let you do that. You can find the show on social media at Twitter and Instagram at HoldoPod, as well as Facebook and YouTube at HoldoPod.
Point at the thing. You gotta do all the pointing. We're live. You gotta point.
And then individually, you can find Mike and I on Instagram and Twitter too. That stuff will be in the show notes once this is on the interwebs later as it lives. And then where can they find you, Collins?
Oh yeah, thanks everyone. So I'm on the socials at CEZEANY. I know it's a little bit complicated. It's basically C and then my last name. But thank you gentlemen so much for having me on, especially on Star Wars Day. It's been a real honor.
Great having you. And thank you to Gustavo Marx for tuning in.
Yeah, commenting. But you can also email us at holdopod@gmail.com, and you can follow our editor, Factor, on Instagram and Twitter as well. But as always, we are grateful to George Lucas for creating the Star Wars universe.
Oh dear, thank the maker.